Hello, hello, hello. Good morrow, friends. 'Tis I, Bones McKay. Don't know why that's been my opening recently, but we're rolling with it. A while ago, I did a video about ADHD, and I was like, here's my advice. And a while before that, Ursula made a video about ADHD, and she was like, here's my advice, because we're an ADHD power couple, possibly. I don't know if my ADHD diagnosis was thrown in the trash. I don't care, honestly. I'm neurodiverse. That's the answer. Speaking of which, so when I made my video about how to write while having ADHD, I got a comment asking advice for making comics while autistic. And yes, I was also diagnosed with autism. I don't know what's going on, honestly. I read that comment and I was like, man, I should do that. And I thought, and I honestly, I'm not really sure what the challenges are for an autistic writer or artist. In fact, I would love to hear some comments from y'all about what you do struggle with. I'm sure there's stuff I struggle with, but I'm a pretty good compensator for things, so I don't always appreciate the fact that I am compensating, which is kind of where this video is gonna go, because I am dyslexic AF, and I thought, okay, I may not know what to say for an autism video, but I do have some advice for being a dyslexic writer, because it's really funny. So I think about it a lot more. I'll get into it later in this, but suffice it to say, it's not rare or weird to be a dyslexic writer. Dyslexic people are perfectly capable of reading and writing. They just have challenges. So that is the thing. But yeah, I'm gonna talk about all of my advice for that, and you in return are going to click the like button, and you are going to subscribe if you haven't already, because that's just the deal. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. I'm here to enforce them. If you aren't aware who I am a writer. I write comics, and I've written two novels that are published now. I have a bop. What's being drawn right now is a webtoonized version of one of my novels, The Books of Avo, which is available now. I think right now, if you're not a backer, you can only get it on ebook, but it is available in my itch.io store. So, wow, that's a lot of plugging. I'm sorry. When it comes to writing and dyslexia, there are some obvious things that make life difficult, and for me, the most helpful thing that I ever discovered in my entire life was text-to-speech and text-to-speech apps. When it comes to writing, I just write with reckless abandon, and then I run it through text-to-speech, and I listen back to it, and that's how I get a sense for my own work. Even before I really discovered text-to-speech, I always would just take time to sit down and read passages out loud to myself, because the act of reading that, I was able to process it better and actually pay attention to all the words, because for me it's just a huge mess when I look at it. Very intimidating, don't want to read it. But through text-to-speech, that has just saved me across the board. It's what makes it possible for me to help y'all with your writing, because when I sit down to read scripts and other things, it's mostly scripts, but when I read scripts, I run it through text-to-speech so I can read it properly and come up with correct things to say, not things that are just being missed because my brain refuses to acknowledge a sentence. So yeah, I have a Mac computer that I mostly write on. I find the text-to-speech is really easy to work on that. I struggle to figure out the Windows one. but I don't really write on my Windows computer all that much, so it's not an issue for me. Of course, the cats are running around. Why wouldn't they be? I'm recording. That's when we run. The other thing that I have is VoiceStream, which is an app. I think it's on iOS and Android. I like it because you can just put basically any type of writing document into it, and then it will just turn it into a audiobook. It's very cool. Works for me. I'm sure there's lots of other ones. This is just the one that I like. I like it because it doesn't have reoccurring like payments. Like, it's not a subscription thing. Like, you pay like $20 or whatever, and then you have the app, and I'm like, good. And you can put Mobi into it. You can put EPUB. You can put PDF. When it's reading a PDF, it doesn't constantly reread the header over and over again, which I love. Yeah, super recommend. But just like text-to-speech in general has just been such a lifesaver. When I went back to school as an adult and used text-to-speech, instead of just powering through, like, my grades skyrocket. It's crazy. So I highly recommend that. The other thing that I think helps me is diagrams. Maybe this is just like an everyday person writer suggestion, but like I always have like little diagrams I make to describe like concepts to me in my stories. I find it very helpful. I have some crazy ones that I can't show you because they're huge spoilers, but they're very funny to look at, especially if you're like a visual person, like a lot of you probably are, because this channel is about comic creation. If you're a visual person, they can be very, very helpful. I like to break down like relationships through like a diagram. If you're someone who likes to outline your plots, diagrams, super helpful with like writing along the arc, whatever. Helpful, good, great. Not something I entirely use all the time, but definitely something I should mention is diagrams. It sounded like I was leading into something else, but I'm not. I have been working on editing recently, which involves a lot of constantly rereading my writing. Text-to-speech, mwah, chef's kiss, perfect, works so well, helps me so much. But also organization through colors and folders. So helpful. I know a lot of people, they'll write like a story on like one Word doc and just go push you all the way through. That is so overwhelming once you're done and you look at what you have. So it's good to organize as you go along, and then you can mark up things with colors and create a more visual representation of your story. So what I mean by this is I use Scrivener, but I think you can just use regular folders on your computer, and I will just like make scenes. So if you wanted to do it just in regular folders, what you would do is you would have your main folder, then you'd have a chapter folder, and then in your each chapter you'd have all of your scenes one by one in them. Another answer for doing this, if you don't want to do Scrivener, is just find like a coding app. They do basically the same stuff as Scrivener, but they also just have like a coding language syntax already in. But you can just write like regular text stuff in it. So that's things like atom. I think it's atom. Is it atom? I'm saying atom because like when I say atom, it sounds like Adam. So yeah, I think that's the one on Mac. I don't know. I should have looked this up. But if you don't have like the money for Scrivener, like there's a lot of free like coding apps that really like kind of work the same way, where you can just have all of your folders, and then you can write like little sections and separate them into text files. It's obviously not as in-depth as Scrivener for what you want to do, but it serves the purpose of like organizing things, but keeping it in one doc in a way, despite it being like several documents and text files. And the reason you want to do that, the reason why you want to break things up is just for the purposes of editing and your future self. It's so much easier to write and edit when you have a visual representation in front of you. So if you label all of your folders with like colors, you can break down like what characters are in what scene and what level of work is needed on each of your files. That's how I do it. But color is hugely your friend. Whenever I sit down to make YouTube videos, okay, not whenever I have like a long script, this is obviously rambling. If it's not obviously rambling, I don't know, man. But when I do that, I will break things down with like a colored highlighter so I don't skip over things. I'll just highlight one concept at a time. So like just breaking stuff up like that is just useful. And my other helpful advice is to get help, okay? Like you can't do it. Even people without dyslexia need help with editing. You're just gonna miss things. You might miss things at like a higher degree. You might like skip over words way more or write them out of order or write the wrong word and just not be able to catch it even through text-to-speech. Text-to-speech is great for proofreading. Like even if you're not dyslexic, I would recommend just like text-to-speech because it can read out loud to you without your brain correcting as you're reading, because your brain is just like, oh, okay, that word is there, even if it's not. So like text-to-speech, so powerful. Off track again. But yeah, like get people to proofread all of your stuff. There's so many times in just comics where there's like tiny sentences that I feel like shouldn't be ever wrong because they're tiny. But they are. They're horribly messed and other eyes are needed. So, and that's kind of like all my like practical advice, all my like nitty-gritty kind of stuff. My last advice is don't get a cat. Crazy. No, but like my last advice is just to not hate on yourself, because I think it's like easy to like hate on yourself. It just like obviously like if you're want to be writing and you're struggling with like reading, it's like so frustrating and it's easy to just like beat yourself up over it, but don't do that. The more you work on it, the more you like rely on like helpful tools and stuff, like your general ability will definitely improve. Like I was like way worse until I just started writing so much. It really helps because like a lot of dyslexia or whatever, I guess not a lot of it, like it's like a huge spectrum, like such a huge umbrella is dyslexia or whatever, right? For some people, a lot of it comes down to not being able to automatically read in like the same way as like a neurotypical person. It's just not an automatic process. You're not in an automatic car, you're in a manual. And if you get really good at driving manual, you just gotta keep practicing and keep it up, and it helps. Brains are powerful, and you got this. On that same like line of reasoning, that same like don't hate on yourself thing, is like there's actually like a lot of strengths to dyslexia that like I was never told about. There's like a trade-off for things, right? And a lot of them actually suit being a writer, being a creative person, an artist or whatever very well. Yeah, it's pretty interesting that that's like a thing. So I thought I might talk a little bit about that. I didn't know any of this stuff, and don't take all my word for all of this. I'd look into it yourself on the interwebs and your local library. What am I even going on about? The first one that comes to mind in like an artistic kind of field is that dyslexics can have really strong material reasoning. I think that's the word. I think it's kind of like spatial, right? A lot of architects are dyslexic. I think it's, again, don't quote me. This is just me rambling. But I think there's a higher instance of dyslexics among architects. The way that it was kind of like explained to me was that dyslexia, like you have like a little more trouble with like 2 dimensions, left and right, up and down a little bit. east, west, all of that, like just flat, blah, or whatever. But when you look at like 3D, you're really good at it. A lot of people can be really good at it, and you just kind of think in 3D instead of 2D. And part of that can be like, if you're very good at like thinking in 3D and rotating objects in your mind, and like you can just like create a house in your mind and you can go through it and you can spin it backwards and all that stuff. So like your brain just be doing that all the time. So when it looks at like a piece of paper and is looking at the words, it's just spinning them all over the place, because it's like, I'm so good at spinning stuff. I'm just really good at spinning, and it wants to do that. I feel this on a deep personal level. I'm not an architect. I'm terrible at explaining things, unfortunately. I'm terrible at explaining things spatially, and it makes me feel like when push comes to shove, it makes me feel like I'm terrible at it. So like me and Ursula will be like moving a couch down the stairs, and I just know where to put things. I know how to move it to get it through the tiny door, but I cannot explain it for the life of me. So that doesn't help. I think the best example to me of realizing that I have good material reasoning was playing Tears of the Kingdom, which is a lot of like problem solving with like 3D objects and stuff. Like there's this one puzzle where you have to make a cube with all these pieces, and like I can just do it like immediately. Like I walk into the room, I make the cube, and then I was just watching Ursula struggle through this problem, and I was trying to explain it to her and I couldn't. I just was like, you just do it. So like I definitely have like some strong 3D thoughts, man. And that's like super helpful as an artist. So like if you happen to have really good spatial material reasoning, if you can really think of things like that, you might have like your dyslexia to thank for that. It might be like a trade-off that's happening there. And it's interesting like that you don't have to visualize to have like good material reasoning, which is weird. You can just like intuitively know things. Like you just got the vibes, but you cannot explain it and you cannot visualize it, but you can do it. It's wild. I think I heard like a story about like an architect who like, I think it was in one of the dyslexia books or whatever, that like lost his ability to visualize but didn't lose his ability to just make all the material reasoning stuff. It was wild. I don't know. I'm such a great storyteller, guys. I'm so great at keeping information in my head. So that's one thing. And I think as a comic artist, that can be very helpful if you're very good at that kind of stuff. The other one is interconnected reasoning. This one, I find this was like just me. It's just so me. So like dyslexics tend to be jacks of all trades in a sense, very relatable. They tend to like, they're more likely to be like interdisciplinary, where they're like, I don't know, like they have like multiple fields that they want to go in. They don't really dive deep into like a single one. Through that, they're often able to create innovation by seeing like connections that aren't super obvious. And I feel this on such a deep personal level. Because like I was learning about like linguistics a bit ago, because I was working on conlang, constructing a language. And like it is so much like, what's the word for it? Evolution, like biology. Like I love looking at like the evolutionary tree, the tree of life. I love looking at like how animals evolve and stuff, and it's just so much like how languages evolve. It's like ridiculous to me, and there's just so much like overlap that I can see. And the way that kind of was explained to me was, when you are dyslexic and you're good with interconnected reasoning, a lot of it can be like your brain is very big picture, and it's very good at making very large jumps. It's really good at taking very long, big steps. Is not as good with like detail and taking small steps. So it can be hard to just kind of like go into the detail and read, but it can be good at like seeing forest through the trees, so to speak. That's helpful. I think you can get like a lot of creativity out of that kind of thinking, and you can make some really cool metaphors artistically, visually, what have you. Being able to make those connections and draw them where other people might not, I think that's really cool. It's very powerful. So if you're really good at that, bless you. Okay, don't hate on yourself, because super powerful. So if you're not so good at the little tiny details, maybe it's because you're good. You like the big details, not the details. The other thing, big picture. Cool. Just have a friend who helps you with the little details. If you want to be the broad brush, be the broad brush. The other one, again, this one's going to speak deeply to me. I think this one speaks the most deeply to me. I think I'll go back to interconnected reasoning while talking about this, but this one is narrative reasoning. Like I was saying, how there's like a lot of architects because of spatial reasoning powers. There's actually a lot of writers. That's my secret card I was holding on accident here, is that there's actually a lot of writers who are dyslexic. It's impressive. It sounds so silly, but if you sit down and look it up, if you look up dyslexic writers, you will find a lot of cool people. The one that comes right to the forefront of my mind is F. Scott Fitzgerald, Great Gatsby writer. Obviously comes to my mind because I am currently working on my 1920s Gatsby-esque lesbian dragon book, but like, you know, there's other ones. There's like a lot of other ones. It is very heartening to see it. And some of that can be connected to like the idea of narrative reasoning. Okay, so there's this thing called narrative reasoning, and it's the ability to create mental scenes and sequences, imaginary or otherwise. Understandably, this is a very helpful thing if you are a writer, to mentally be able to create scenes, connect them all together, right? Just think in sequences. It is so true. I'm very, very good at this one. I have a very good memory when it comes to narratives, and I don't even know if it's a memory so much as like I'm very good at reasoning out a narrative, and it helps me memorize everything. When I was learning about this, and as well as like interconnected reasoning, because it's kind of like the way that I like look at a story is just like as this web of like interconnected things. I often say to people that if I can't remember something about my story, it wasn't worth keeping because it doesn't fit anyways. Like everything should fit together and make sense. And so what frustrates people when it comes to my writing process is I don't really write down outlines at all. I write very short outlines before I start writing a scene. I think I write those down. I make a quick little outline of like what I want to write in a scene, because I'm very good at forgetting at the moment. I think it's just like ADHD. I just need to write what I'm doing to keep myself on track. But as far as like a big picture outline, like I don't really do that. And every time I sit down to do it and kind of like hammer out a piece, like I don't like it. I just like to keep it all in my head, which is incredibly powerful and disgusting, but it just like all fits. It just all makes sense, and like I can just like put it together in there. Like I don't need to write down an outline, like I got it. And that's why I feel the idea of narrative reasoning exceptionally strongly, as well as kind of like interconnected reasoning. And like when you think about it, when you think about narrative reasoning, it's like what about this even relates to dyslexia? Like why would this cause you to be dyslexic? like if these things are kind of like a trade-off, like what is the trade-off with narrative reasoning? And the trade-off is, again, it comes down kind of to detail, but this is sort of like if you have difficulty with rote memorization. Yeah. I'm not great at that. I'm really terrible at it. Rote memorization is like memorizing little information bits, little bits and bytes. Disembodied information is kind of what I would call it. Learning the multiplication table, horrific experience, unless it was one that had like a very recognizable pattern to me, like 5s and 10s, 11s, or whatever. And the 9 times table. But all the other ones, the fact that you just had to memorize those, impossible. So like, again, that's kind of like a detail thing. Like when it comes down to like reading something, I'm really good at getting the general vibe, the big picture, and putting it together. I'm not great at like synthesizing it in a way where like I can pull out like quotes. That's always been my struggle, and finding like specific instances or whatever. Like, God help me. Probably why I'm not giving great examples right now. I mean, another part of that is because my mom, I gave her my book on dyslexia and then she never gave it back to me. Yeah, I need that back. When I think and I memorize stuff, it does tend to like be in this kind of format of like scenes, right? I don't tend to remember things without like it being attached to like a lot of stuff. So like even thinking about like the times tables, like I think about them as like when I was like learning them. Like I have like this memory of learning the different tricks and tips for the times tables from like my brother, who is learning it from a book. There's like a whole scene, like I can picture it very vividly. I won't go into it, but it's that kind of thing, like where it's just, if something has a bunch of stuff around it, it's easy to remember it, whereas if it doesn't, I'm not good at it because it's hard. And ironically, like when you have like this sort of thing going on, reading like more simplified stuff can end up like being less informative than reading something really dense, because if there's more information around something, it's easier for me to interpret and mesh in my mind, being able to connect it to stuff, to connect it to like an experience, something visual or whatever, like it's good. So that is that. The last one is dynamic reasoning, and I don't think I'm great with dynamic reasoning. I don't think I'm bad at it. Maybe I am. I don't want to just say like I have all of the good traits and like I'm great and amazing or whatever. I don't think this is like my thing. But dynamic reasoning, it's like being able to strategize, I guess, and like CSI brain, and yeah, I don't even quite understand it entirely, I'm realizing, because I guess it just doesn't click with me, but maybe it clicks with other people. I think when it came to like creativity and dyslexia, it's like it comes down to like that manual learning thing, and when you're learning everything manually, like you're able to, it's weird because like you're not great at details, but like if you sit down and you have to manually read, if you tend to go through life on manual, you do notice things, you do notice like inefficiencies, and you're able to like kind of synthesize this stuff and come up with ideas or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling, I'm losing it. I'm losing the plot a bit. I'm going way past my docket, my what is it? My list of things to talk about. So basically, being good at reading is stinky. No, if you struggle with dyslexia, hopefully like you can see like some cool things going on in there. I know like with more severe dyslexia, it can be a lot harder and you might not be able to get over some of the hurdles, but a lot of like moderate to mild, like you got this. If you have like a passion for writing, like it's a great way to just really improve those skills, and it'll help you throughout all of your life. If you really like reading, just go for it. Yeah, you got this. Anyways, thank you for listening to this. I don't know if it was good at all. Um, I've been thinking about doing this video for a while, but I just feel like I just feel like I didn't have anything good to say. But I often say this before I post a video that like everyone likes, so I figured I might as well get it out there. Also, like, I got another comment asking about like what voice app I use, and yeah. I was like, okay, dyslexia time, let's go. And then I rocketed out of here. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Thank you for listening. I have to edit this.